Hi, everyone. Today's guest is someone who brings both professional expertise and genuine compassion to the surrogacy space. Kelly Johnson is a licensed clinical social worker and fertility counselor who has spent years walking alongside individuals and couples navigating infertility, loss, and the emotional complexities of family building. In our conversation, Kelly offers such a thoughtful perspective on what it really looks like to care for your emotional well being during a surrogacy journey, whether you're just getting started or are already matched. We talk about how grief and hope can show up at the same time, why strong communication between surrogates and intended parents is so important, and how support groups, like the ones that are offered to intended parents at Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, can make a big difference along the way. Kelly has a true gift for holding space and helping people feel seen in their experiences, and I'm so excited to share her insights with you today. Enjoy! Me, you, and who? Who knew it would take more than two people to have a baby? In a world where infertility is no longer a taboo topic, this podcast will take you through all of the different aspects of surrogacy and egg donation through the lens of many who walk this journey in different ways. My name is Whitney Hall, and I am a two-time surrogate, now turned surrogacy coordinator for Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions, the very agency I used when I chose to carry for two amazing families. With this podcast, it is our goal to help guide and support you as you learn about what it takes to grow a family in an alternative way, as well as hear inspiring and beautiful stories of how this path has changed lives forever. We can't wait for you to hear about just one more way happy families are created every day. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being here and doing this with us. I'm so excited.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, okay. So before we get started, well, actually, just to, right off the bat, just share, if you would, a little bit about your background and what led you, to focus your work on fertility and just third-party reproduction.
Yeah, so I've been a social worker for almost 10 years now. I've almost always worked in the medical realm to some extent. And then I really found my passion for just perinatal mental health, high risk pregnancies, infertilities, infertility counseling. My heart has just always really been in helping people experiencing something really hard, whether it's like
Yeah.
they got really hard news or the worst day of their lives and they're navigating something. Like I've always kind of wanted to be that support person. And so through my work just in the hospital system, I really found that I loved like high risk pregnancies, working with people navigating pregnancy decision making, challenges getting pregnant. And then I found myself working. I actually got the opportunity to work full time as a therapist built into a fertility clinic.
Oh,
And then
wow.
yeah. And so that's where I got just all the knowledge and training around specifically working with people using donor egg, donor sperm, donor embryo, gestational carrier, a combination of some of those things. And I really just love working in this realm.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's amazing how it's so wonderful to have someone that is able to handle those big spaces like that. And I love that it is such a passion for you. I know you've supported just obviously through your work at the hospital and then, now so many individuals and couples that are going through this process and, just in all of those different spaces and just different moments in that. What are kind of some of the emotional themes, I guess, that tend to show up most often, specifically for intended parents, once maybe they've matched with a surrogate or have made kind of some of those, big decisions, whether it's using a donor or just things like that?
I think what I see so often are just themes of anxiety, of feeling a sense of just loss of
Sure.
control, um,
Yeah.
grief and loss, and not being able to carry their pregnancy for whatever reason, really just grief and loss and some trauma, and that their family building story may not be looking like they expected it to or hoped it to look like. And there's so many emotional layers that come with that I would say those emotions to some extent are present with almost all the intended parents that I work with.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about how, hope and grief can kind of coexist side by side, maybe especially with parents who have experienced, just loss, whether it's loss of how they thought their family building journey would go, or, even, worst day of your life, child loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all those forms of loss are so, so valid. And what I see so often, like you said, that hope and grief do coexist. And I always tell people, like, I know hope feels so vulnerable and so scary because that hope, in some sense, has been taken from them at some point in time, or the sense of safety around pregnancy or family building has been taken from them. And so it's normal to struggle to hold on to hope. And people often say, like, hope feels really scary, and it's easier to just set myself up to expect the worst again because the worst has already happened to us.
Sure.
And so I really work with people on like balancing, how do we hold on to hope? And obviously you still have hope because you're in this process and you're making steps forward. While also just acknowledging and recognizing the grief, the loss, the trauma, and that both of those things can work together and at parallel times.
I love that phrase that you said, that sense of safety in family building. I don't think I've ever looked at I don't think I've ever looked at the world in that way. There is kind of, I think especially women, it almost feels like this is like a sure thing. You grow up with these,
Right.
Fantasies of how it's all supposed to go. And it does feel safe when you're thinking about that.
Yeah. And I think for so many women, in couples, it's just like so many times people spend so much time preventing pregnancy early on in their lives. And then they get to the point where we're like, we're ready for this. And then they experience infertility or pregnancy loss, miscarriages. I mean, and then it's kind of like, oh, what we thought this was going to look like isn't happening. And now I might not trust my body. So I don't feel safe in my own body to carry a pregnancy. Especially when couples have gotten negative pregnancy tests, had really hard pregnancy ultrasounds and losses, that this sense of safety in the process just altogether is now gone. And that's where that trauma comes from, that even when people make the decision to switch paths to using a GC, that a lot of times intended parents are like, we're terrified to go to ultrasounds because every other ultrasound we've gone to, we've gotten bad news. Like, this isn't as exciting anymore. It feels scary. And so I think it just goes back to that trauma piece that's so interwoven in so many people's reproductive stories.
For sure. For sure. And I know for me as a surrogate, I remember kind of feeling that juxtaposition of, oh, there's this happy, so exciting thing. Like, yay for that positive pregnancy test. And oh my goodness, anatomy scan. We're going to get that adorable picture. And, I had not experienced loss. So I didn't know it from a personal level. I knew it just really from a knowledge level, I guess. And I think it was sometimes a little baffling, before I really, really dug into this world. Trying to understand why maybe, intended mom might be, oh, yes, I'm happy about the positive pregnancy test, but I'm not going to jump for joy at the moment.
Right. Yeah. I see that so often. And I think for GCs, it can be hard because they're like, this is so exciting. This is what we've been working towards. And a lot of times for intended parents, they may have gotten several positive pregnancy tests that then ended in a loss or ended in some kind of really hard outcome. And so I feel like so often for intended parents are like, yes, we're happy to get a positive pregnancy test, but also we're still kind of holding our breath. And they can feel like until this baby's in our arms, like we're not going to be able to take a sigh of relief. And so I've seen a lot of times where intended parents might struggle to go to ultrasounds or connect with their GC because out of fear. Yeah. And like, I'm just afraid that this is all going to be taken from us or that the rug's going to be ripped out from under us at any point in time. Mm-hmm. And so those emotions can definitely come up. I mean, even after matching.
Sure. Absolutely. What are some ways that a surrogate can, just support or make room for those types of emotions?
When I work with surrogates, I always try to just give some education on, listen, like no matter what IP you're working with, they've gone through something in their reproductive journey to get to this point of needing to use a surrogate.
Sure.
So there probably is a baseline of anxiety or feeling like this lack of control. So that's why maybe you might feel like you're under the microscope at times. Or they might feel, your IPs might feel distant because they're struggling to connect with you or the pregnancy just out of this sense of grief and fear.
Yeah.
So I always just like to provide a little bit of education just to give that insight as to like, hey, this is what it might be like for your IPs. And on the flip side, I do the same thing about, hey, this is what it might be like for your GC.
For sure.
And then where can we meet in the middle?
Yeah. I think finding that middle, being able to understand their perspective, I think it still can create, I know at least it can make you just feel better about it, right? Like, oh, I understand where that's coming from.
Totally. Just that sense of empathy and understanding of like, oh, that makes sense. Maybe why they're feeling scared or not as excited to go into an ultrasound based on what they've been through.
Sure. Absolutely. So for the parents that, again, with that trauma, when you do get to those big moments, positive pregnancy test, viability, where, that heartbeat confirmation, all of those things, those can, like, that does bring up, like you said, a lot of anxiety, and especially for intended parents who have experienced some sort of loss. How do you help intended parents navigate those moments?
I really work with them on just kind of trying to reclaim some of these moments of quote unquote normalcy.
Yeah.
In that, if, for example, if it was really important to them to be able to surprise their friends and family with a pregnancy announcement because that felt normal. It's like, then how can we do that? And how can we reclaim some of these significant moments that they can kind of rewrite their story based on where they're at, but still really holding on to these pieces that are important to them that we can still incorporate in the surrogacy journey.
Oh, I love that. That's a great idea. Hey, we'll get right back to the show, but I wanted to take a quick moment to speak directly to those of you dreaming of growing your family. For the past 18 years, we at Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions have had the privilege of walking alongside hopeful parents, guiding them through egg donation and surrogacy with empathy, expertise, and personal experience. Many of us on the team have been intended parents or surrogates or egg donors ourselves, so we understand just how important this journey is. Whether you're just starting to explore your options or ready to take the next step, we're here to help. You can schedule a free 15-minute call with our team at createahappyfamily.com to get your questions answered and see if we're the right fit for your journey. You don't have to figure this out alone. This is your invitation to learn more and take the next step toward the family you've been dreaming of. All right, let's get back to the show. What have been some of the fun pregnancy announcements that you've heard intended parents doing in this type of situation?
I mean, even separate from pregnancy announcements, I've had intended parents like celebrate transfer day by, like, during COVID times, I had a set of intended parents. They weren't allowed in the building,
Sure,
restrictions, but
right.
They had like a parking lot party and like brought like snacks and breakfast and like made a whole thing out of it, of just like a parking lot
tailgate transfer
little celebration. Yeah. And so it's kind of like, how can we make these moments special, even if there are, other circumstances going on? So that was probably one of my favorites of how they're like, no, we're still celebrating this really big moment and like making a day out of it.
I love it. Oh my gosh, that is so fun. So, again, kind of going back to this idea of, those feelings coexisting, is there, I know sometimes maybe I've had experiences where parents are, they're so afraid to be happy, or they almost feel like, oh, if I do have a tailgate party, then that means I'm not acknowledging my grief. How can kind of those two coexist in kind of those happy moments?
I think a piece of it is just, I always encourage people just like acknowledge what you're feeling. Like, it's so much better to acknowledge these feelings of grief or loss than to sweep them under the rug, because they're going to come out at some point. So it's better to like let them come up in manageable pieces. But a lot of work I do is just acknowledging like, this is your story, and you can be, so sad that this was your story up until this point, and so excited that surrogacy was an opportunity for you to, build your family. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of that example of like, you can absolutely be grieving, carrying a pregnancy and be so sad that this is your story, while also thankful that surrogacy was even an option. And so it's kind
Sure.
of using that framework to honor their story, but also acknowledge like what is going well and what are we also thankful for in this moment.
I love that. I love that. That's so beautiful. Again, just this whole idea of coexisting and having all of these things all at once, which I mean can be overwhelming, but just focus on it one little bit at a
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. So going to kind of that connection piece with, intended parents and their surrogate, what do if they're wanting to, I know I've had a lot of parents, they're unsure. They're worried
Mm-hmm.
that they're not doing, quote, doing it right or things like that. What do you kind of recommend like for intended parents whenever, they're wanting to build that emotional connection with their surrogate in this process?
I've seen so many times in working with both surrogates and intended parents that both are like, well, I don't want to be like too much, or I don't want to like step on their toes, and so
Yeah.
then a lot of
Everyone's so
times,
nice to each other.
yeah. And I always tell people, like, if it feels right after match, like start just having just those conversations of just, how are you? And it doesn't need to be surrogacy or pregnancy related. It can just be check-ins of like, hey, how's the process going for you so far? Just to really build that foundation, because I think people are so scared of what if this falls through, or what if I
Sure.
come off as micromanaging my surrogate, or if the surrogate's like, what if I'm giving too many updates? But what I always tell intended parents is that pretty much every surrogate that I've ever worked with wants them to be involved in the pregnancy. Like they're
Yeah.
sharing this experience and this journey with them. And I feel like so many surrogates are so altruistic that like they get that fulfillment from like seeing the parents' involvement,
Mm-hmm.
seeing their joy, seeing their happiness, helping them
Mm-hmm.
become parents. And so that's a big piece of it. And so I think part of it's kind of like jumping in and having some trust in the process and making those connections.
Yeah, for sure. I love that advice of especially in the beginning, right? Cuz there's paperwork that you're doing and like it's not like the fun pregnancy stuff yet. Like there's just kind of a lot of like check boxes that you're going through. And that's such a great opportunity to just start working on just that friendship. Like you said, "Hey,
Yeah.
how's it going?" And, "What's for dinner tonight?" or,
Mhm.
whatever it may be.
Yeah. And like if you end up to be in the same state, or if your surrogate's being evaluated at your home clinic, like those are all really great opportunities to also be like, hey, can we meet up for breakfast before the appointments? Or just like having those connection points along the way just to build that foundation.
Yeah. What advice maybe would you give for navigating, you know, as you're getting to know each other and just maybe navigating some of those emotional boundaries with a intended parent and a surrogate?
I tend to encourage people that if something's not feeling right with communication, like for example, if you feel like your surrogate's not giving you enough updates and you're hoping
Hmm.
for more, or if you're a surrogate and you're like, I sent this update and they like sent me back the thumbs up emoji and that didn't feel good because it just didn't feel like
Sure.
much of a response. Um, or if the surrogate's like, I feel like they're asking me what I'm eating and what I'm doing at all times of the day. Like I also need them to trust me. Like those are some common things that I feel like come up.
Yeah.
And I think it's always better to address it if you can sooner than later, because this is a
Hmm.
longer term relationship. And so if someone's feeling like communication isn't going how they're wanting it to, like it is so, so worth addressing. And this is where you also use your agency. If you don't feel comfortable addressing it, or you did
Absolutely.
address it and it didn't change, that's where you loop in the agency, because they can so much be that middleman for like, okay, what's going on? How can we make this work? How can we mend this relationship?
Sure.
Because I think, ideally no issues would come up in the relationship, but that might
Huh.
not be realistic all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just important to address as it comes up instead of letting it kind of simmer and then be a bigger issue later on.
For sure. For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Because the thumbs up could have just been, oh, they were really busy in that very moment and they're going to text you later
Right.
that night. Or, you're not feeling like you're getting enough updates, but let's get to the deeper part of that. There's not always a whole lot going on in certain times during pregnancy
Right.
or, yeah. Yeah, for
Exactly.
sure. For
So I
sure.
think it's just about communicating from each party, like what you need and what communication feels good and at what cadence does that feel good too.
Yeah, yeah. Do you, I feel like too, when you start kind of that early part of the relationship at the beginning, and it is kind of building more of a friendship versus just focusing on just the surrogate intended parent goal of having, the baby. Um, Not only does it build that trust, but then as maybe, like you said, kind of that cadence morphs and flows, it feels a little more natural, and you can bring things up in a
Ex-
not worrisome way, I guess.
Yeah, I think, and that's where, if you have that foundation of a relationship to some extent, it is easier to bring up harder topics or to navigate some of those conflicts that might come up. And so I think no matter what that relationship ends up looking like, it always is beneficial to at least just have that foundation of good communication.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What maybe strategies or grounding tools would you recommend for maybe someone who is kind of just carrying an extra emotional weight when they're on this journey?
I mean, first and foremost, I think connecting to a fertility therapist just to have your own
Hmm.
space to process this because
Yeah.
feelings can absolutely change throughout the surrogacy journey. And one moment you might think that you're okay and that this was the path that you're on. And then other moments you might be in a puddle of tears
Yeah.
and that it's really hard. And just knowing that the emotions with it can come and go. And it doesn't mean that you're taking steps backwards in your emotional healing journey. It's so normal for those to come and go. And so I can't say enough about connecting to a qualified fertility therapist who
Yes.
truly specializes in surrogacy, donor conception, fertility counseling. Like truly, truly having that specialty is absolutely key.
Yeah, absolutely. For maybe some like in the moment, you're you're getting ready to go to transfer day, or you're waiting to, maybe that 10 days between, transfer and beta, or, things like that. What would you maybe recommend, just little things that an intended parent or surrogate can
Yeah.
do during, well, I would say, yeah, during those kind of anxious times, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all recognize that there are much more anxious times in this process, like transfer day, the 9 or
Sure.
10-day wait, like waiting for an ultrasound. We know anxiety is high. So I encourage people, whether it's parents or surrogates, to really use that time to pencil in 30 minutes a day of self-care, of something that brings them joy,
I love that.
happiness, relaxation, comfort, and just being so intentional, knowing that this is a high stress time. And what do I need to do right now to take care of myself? Because the more that we do those things, the more that if we do need to cope with something that comes up, we're better
Hmm.
able to handle it. And so, whether it's, I think it's a great thing to do for surrogates, for parents, in any kind of waiting periods. I think that that can just be so, so helpful.
Yeah, for sure. What do you feel like is maybe, we kind of know about those like high anxiety points. Do you feel like there's anything that's maybe overlooked during a surrogacy journey?
I think where I often see a lot of anxiety or pieces of control that try to come out is either in the legal process or after they've gotten through legal.
Oh, sure.
Um, I think that's one that I think is often overlooked because it's like, oh, well, we're just going to be nervous for like transfer or those, moments that we think about.
Right.
But I think it can be the day to day moments of like, maybe I would be choosing to eat all organic food if I was carrying my own pregnancy. And like, I wonder if I wonder if she ate McDonald's today, or I wonder if she ate good today. So I think it
Sure.
can also be those like in between moments where you're like, what is she doing? How is she taking care of her body and our baby? That can really present themselves and just need to be addressed sooner than later so that the IPs can experience, some sense of reduced anxiety, build trust with the GC, and so that the GC also feels like the intended parents are trusting.
Sure. No, absolutely. And I feel like those little moments, those little one-offs, that just kind of creep up and pop up, are why, exactly like you said, it is so important to have some sort of support, whether it be your friend, a family member, or it's a, qualified therapist in, this
Yeah.
space. So one of the things that is so cool is that you are leading our support groups here with
Yeah.
egg donor and surrogate solutions for intended parents.
Yeah.
Why is the support group like that? I know we've kind of touched on it, but why do you think something versus individual therapy, but having more of a support group of intended parents is so important?
Yeah. So I absolutely love both. And I think the combination of both can
Yes,
be super helpful.
absolutely.
I will say our first support group a couple weeks ago was so successful. And I feel like it was just so, so meaningful. But I think the support group format is really helpful. I know there are a lot of like general infertility support groups out there that
Uh-huh.
people can join online. But I think what I found with those is that they're not surrogacy or donor conception specific. So you might be
Mm,
in the support group with someone who's like doing their first IUI and you're like, I've done 8 IVF cycles and I'm now using like it just feels different.
yeah.
And so I think having the space where you have a small community of people that truly just get it, that their story leading up to surrogacy was probably different than yours. But
Mm-hmm.
at the heart of it, you still have that shared experience of making that decision to use a surrogate,
Mm-hmm.
navigating a relationship with a surrogate. What does it feel like during pregnancy? And I can't tell you how many support groups I've run that people are like, someone will say something and they're like, oh my gosh, like it's so nice to know that I'm not the only one that feels that
Mm-hmm.
way. And then
Mm-hmm.
people share tips and tricks like, hey, this is how we navigated a communication issue with RGC. And this is what was
Yeah.
really helpful for us. And so it's also kind of a great way for people to resource with each other and like, hey, what worked well for you? Is that something I can try? Or hey, how did you manage anxiety going into the ultrasound?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just a really great shared experience space where people can truly find the meaningful connections because so often people are like, well, I don't know anyone else in my life who's used a surrogate or who's used a
Yeah.
donor, and they feel so isolated. And so I think at its root, the support group really, really helps reduce that isolation.
I was gonna say, the number one theme I think in infertility is everyone feels like they're the only one doing it,
Yeah.
and like the only one that is, having issues with infertility or using a surrogate or using a donor. And I'm like, you guys, this world is way bigger than you think, and yet
Yeah.
everyone feels so, like you said, isolated.
hmm Yeah. And no one, I think people are afraid to talk about it just in our
Mm-hmm.
general society. And I think what I found in these support groups is that people feel like it is a safe space to share. I'm feeling maybe jealous that my
Yeah.
surrogate's getting to carry the pregnancy and I'm not. And so it's been hard to go to ultrasounds, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm really grieving not carrying a pregnancy. And so I think it's such a good space to talk about those really hard topics that other people just might not get.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, especially for intended parents who might not be sharing this with people in their lives yet or waiting to share, it can be a
Mm-hmm.
really safe space to talk about, like, hey, my GC did just get a positive pregnancy test. And yes, we're excited, but we're also scared and we're not sharing it with anyone yet. But that group is that space to share it. And so it
Yeah.
just really provides just that safe space for emotional vulnerability and connection.
I love that. For anyone who's maybe hesitating, what might you say to them about the value of being a part of something like this?
I think when people initially hear like joining a support group, it can feel intimidating. And I
Sure.
absolutely get that. But I think that most people walk away from the group being like, that was so helpful. Even just to log on and see there's 3 other people on this screen that simply just get it. Like there's other people using a surrogate and or a donor. And so I think that there's some comfort in that. And it's really informal. I make the group so that the people attending group get what they need to get out of it. And so we really kind of, whatever people are bringing up, we share about that. If they've had a hard week, we talk about that and other people kind of jump into. And so it's really an informal space and professionally led, which I think is also really important.
Yeah.
And we talk about tips and tricks for communication, managing anxiety, so that you also have that toolbox of things that you can use outside of group. So I would tell people, give it a try and see what you think.
There's something so beautiful. I mean, again, it's so beautiful having other people that are in the same spot you are, or they have been in the spot that you are, and you're able to get knowledge from them. And it's different than talking to your girlfriend or your family member who has no idea where you're coming from, and all they can do is just kind of smile and nod and encourage as best they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think just having that community of people that simply just get it. And the groups tend to be on the smaller side. So it is more of an intimate environment where people can truly share, like, this is what's been going on, or this is what we've been struggling with. Like, what have other people done in this situation? And it's not necessarily like the overwhelming positivity that sometimes our friends and family give us of just wanting to make it better. And instead it's like, no, like, let's talk about these hard feelings and really acknowledge what's coming up.
I love that. I love that there is a place, because again, our family and friends, they mean well, but sometimes you do just want to say, no, today just really sucked. And I don't need any toxic positivity or any platitudes right now. I just need someone to say, yeah, today really sucked.
Exactly. And I think the group is a great space for that, for people to be like, yeah, this is hard. Like, this isn't always easy.
Yeah, for sure. Looking back on maybe some of the, just people and families that you have supported, is there a moment or a story that, just reminds you of maybe why this type of work just matters so deeply, and what gets you to just keep going?
I think when I get the baby announcements, when I've worked with
Yes.
people, on their journey for so long, and it's just been such an honor to like walk with them on this journey. And then, I've been with them on the good days, the bad days, everything in between. And then they share this birth announcement, and it's like, this is why we do what we do.
What do you maybe hope every intended parent takes away about just the importance of caring for their mental and emotional well-being during a journey like this?
I would say that now is such a good time to let yourself feel those feelings of grief and loss, process this in therapy, connect to a support group, connect with someone else who has gone through surrogacy. Because the more that we process these feelings now, the less likely they are to come up after your baby is born. So, because so many times people feel a sense of like shame or self blame or guilt in not being able to carry their pregnancy for whatever reason. And if we don't acknowledge and try to process those, they might come out when your baby is born. And so now is such a good time to just process all of this that's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, support groups like this, having individual counseling or therapy is a great avenue. Really, like you said, just that trusted support in someone to work through those feelings and emotions as they arise.
Exactly. Like now is the time to build your support network, whatever that looks like. Try a support group, find what works for you so that you can build that sense of community as you navigate this surrogacy journey.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, Kelly, I can't thank you enough for being here, and then all of the time that you are putting into these amazing intended parent support groups. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
And it's a fun one. For anyone who knows me, they know that Coffee and I have a codependent relationship with each other. And I always love to ask the question, what filled your cup today? Literally or figuratively, what has been the thing that has filled your cup?
That is such a great question. It's so early in the day. I have to pick something.
Oh, there you go.
I know. And I ask clients this question all the time. I'm like, what has gone well today? I would say I had a really meaningful first session with a new client this morning. And it's just those reminders of like, this is why I do what I do. And I love doing this work every single day, working with intended parents all around donor conception, surrogacy. Like, this is where my heart is. And so when I get to do these consults, see these clients, it truly just brings me so much fulfillment and happiness.
I love that. It's true. Those days can be hard, but man, whenever you have those good days, they are really good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well,
Oh, for sure.
thank you so much for having me. I'm so, so excited to be here.
No, thank you, Kelly. I really, really, really appreciate it. And all of the information about the intended parent support groups are going to be in our show notes as well for our intended parents that are part of Egg Donor and Surrogate Solutions. And then for those who want to find out more about Kelly, we will also have her website in our show notes as well. So thank you again, Kelly.
Thank you.